Hi guys, so welcome to the data visualization playlist for data science with Pablo. Today we are going to be talking about univariate plots. So the question is, what are univariate plots? So focus on the screen on the Jupyter notebook, and we are going to document the steps we'll be following in this video. In this video, we're going to define univariate plots. So we're going to look at univariate plots. We are going to look at examples. And it's with the examples, we're going to have the first video, second, third, and so on and so forth. We're also going to talk about why these plots are essential. So let's go over here. Why are univariate plots essential? Right, so first thing is, univariate plots are used to analyze and visualize the distribution of a single variable. So here, analyze and visualize the distribution of a single variable. Right. Next is, why are they essential? So they're essential for many reasons. Let's start off with one, identifying distribution. So this is important, identifying distribution. So we have different types of distributions. We have a normal distribution, we have a uniform distribution, we have skewed distributions. And these types of distributions have, they mean something. They have, there's an implication for it when you look at your data. So identifying distributions. Then detecting outliers. And we can also call this anomalies. Then we can also say understanding central tendencies, mean, median, and mode. So understanding central tendencies, which is mean, median, and mode. Then we can also use it to understand spread and variability. Right, because we want to understand the range, we want to look at standard deviation. What is that? Is the data, tight or spread out? Then finally, for data preprocessing, right? So we say this is for data preprocessing. Now, one of the first examples we're going to be looking at is the histogram. So here I'm going to start off with histogram, and then I'm going to plot a histogram. And then after that, we're going to look at other examples. So what's a histogram for? You can use a histogram to show the frequency distribution of a variable that is numerical or which is continuous, right? So here we histograms plot frequency distributions. The frequency distribution of a continuous variable. A continuous variable can be like age, temperature, stuff like that. Yes, so continuous variable. Now, so how do we plot it? So this is important that we plot it. So before we get started, we're going to import two libraries, right? two popular libraries. We're going to import matplotlib and seaborn, right? So import data visualization libraries. So we have import matplotlib .pyplots as PLT. Then we'll import seaborn. It's interesting to know that seaborn relies on matplotlib APIs, so it's important. So we import seaborn as SNS. Now, the first thing we want is to deal with is we're going to look at data, right? Because it's important to have data and use the data itself, or understand what's going on with the data before we visualize. Now, we are going to use the seaborn repository, and then we're going to load a data set from the seaborn repository. So let's load an example data set. So we're going to use the tips data set, which is a data set mimicking activities in a restaurant, right? So we're going to say sns.load, and we'll have open and in here write tips. Right, and so we can look at the first 5 rows for tips. So you can see we have the total bill, tip, gender, the smoker if they have habits, the day, could it be Sunday, Monday, then you have time, and here is representative of dinner, breakfast, lunch, then size, which is the number of folks that came for the dinner or the lunch. Now we want to plot, and remember before we start, we are looking at frequency distribution of a continuous variable. And what's a continuous variable here? A tip is a continuous variable, total bill a continuous variable, right? So we can let's look at total bill, right? So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to plot a histogram. I'm going to use a mix of matplotlib and seaborn to do this. The first thing we'll do is we can use sns.histplot, which is a histogram, and typically what this does is that it takes a bunch of parameters, and one of the parameters it takes is the data itself. You can see it over here, right? So we see what our data is. Our data is tips, and then we can index total bill, because that's the continuous variable we're working with. We index that. Now we can choose to look at a few things. We can look at the distribution of the data, which is such an important thing, or we could just choose to plot whatever the distribution we have. So because we might not pay attention to maybe the distribution estimate, we would typically say KDE as false, and then we can create beans. So let's just look at beans here. So it tells you how the distribution will be broken. Let's look at 20. If it does not look good, we could change that. Now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to put a title to our visual, right? Now there are a lot of things we can do. We can also plot, look at the size. We did not do plt.figure, but we'll talk about that in future. But we are just looking at by default, right? So we can put plt.title, and here let's just call this histogram of total bill. So this we're putting a title. So next, the figure we have has an x-axis and a y-axis. So we're going to look at plt.xlabel. So if you look at this, it tells you the set label for the x-axis. And so the x-axis, we're going to call this total bill. And we say plt dot y label, and this is for the y-axis, and here we just call this frequency because we want to look at the distribution of total bill. And then finally we have plt.show. Here we render our plot. So when we put this out, typically see what we have got. Now you can see now that we have a visual here. The visual is over here. We can see the distribution. Now from a single distribution of the total bill, which is a univariate plot, we can see from the bills that have been paid, there's something interesting is happening here. And you can see that the bins are in 20s. So we typically started like with 10, let's see from here, 20, right? So in between, we're going to have 10 here, 20, 30, right? So if you look over here, you can see from 10 here, right in the middle here, you can see that the bill paid the most is like 16, something around 16 to $18, right? And if we want to know a few things, we can simply come over here and say tips, and then we look at total bill, and we can use .mode to understand what's the total bill. So you can see the frequency of the bill. So you can see over here how it goes here and around here. So if this is 5, this is 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. So around here, you can see that the bill has something that has been frequently paid for, right? But again, it gives us a sense of the distribution of it. And so somewhere around here, we have something of that nature. But yes, so that's typically what it is to create a univariate plot, and we've looked at a histogram, right? So just take your time and watch this again, right? And as we proceed, we're going to start to have detailed way of creating our visuals. But at this point, we're just doing introductions to these visuals.